What you're about to witness will shake you to your absolute core and leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the current state of WWE programming. Last night's Monday Night Raw delivered what may be the most terrifying and emotionally devastating moment in recent wrestling history, and the footage that's circulating backstage is so disturbing that WWE executives are scrambling to control the narrative before it completely spirals out of their hands. Dominik Mysterio, the rising star who has become one of the most polarizing figures in modern wrestling, collapsed during what was supposed to be a routine segment with Liv Morgan, clutching his chest in what medical professionals are now confirming was a legitimate cardiac episode. The cameras captured every horrifying second as the 27-year-old wrestler went from delivering his typical arrogant heel promo to writhing on the canvas in what witnesses describe as the most genuine fear and panic they've ever seen from any performer. But here's what's making this situation absolutely explosive and has the entire wrestling world up in arms. WWE's initial response was to continue filming, treating Dominik's medical emergency as if it were part of the scripted entertainment, while Liv Morgan's breakdown and desperate attempts to get medical help were initially dismissed by production staff as really good acting. The callousness and complete disregard for human life displayed by WWE's production team in those crucial first minutes is so appalling that it's sparked outrage from wrestlers, fans, and medical professionals worldwide. The footage that leaked from ringside shows Liv Morgan's absolute terror as she realized this wasn't part of any storyline. Her screams for medical help, her tears as she held Dominik's hand while he struggled to breathe, and her complete emotional breakdown as paramedics rushed to the ring. None of it was scripted, none of it was planned, and all of it was happening while WWE cameras continued rolling, capturing what should have been a private medical emergency for their entertainment programming. You want to know what's really going to make your blood boil? Sources backstage are reporting that several WWE executives and production staff members were actually frustrated with Liv Morgan for breaking character and ruining the segment, even as Dominik was being loaded onto a stretcher and rushed to a local hospital. The level of corporate heartlessness and the prioritization of entertainment value over human life is so staggering that it's forcing fans and industry insiders to confront some very uncomfortable truths about the wrestling business. This isn't just another wrestling storyline gone wrong. This is a real-life medical emergency involving a young athlete whose heart literally stopped functioning properly while millions of viewers watched live on television. The fact that We's immediate instinct was to exploit this tragedy for dramatic effect rather than prioritize Dominik's health and safety reveals a corporate culture that values ratings and storylines over the basic humanity of their performers. The timeline of events leading up to this cardiac episode is raising serious questions about WWE's medical protocols and their responsibility for monitoring the health and safety of their wrestlers. Multiple sources are reporting that Dominik had been complaining of chest pains and unusual fatigue for several weeks leading up to last night's incident, but these concerns were allegedly dismissed by WWE's medical staff as nothing more than anxiety or performance nerves. Industry insiders are revealing that the demanding schedule WWE places on their performers, combined with the physical and emotional stress of maintaining their heel persona in the Judgment Day, may have contributed to the conditions that led to Dominik's cardiac episode. The young wrestler has been working an incredibly demanding schedule, traveling constantly, maintaining his physique through intense training regimens, and dealing with the psychological pressure of living up to his father's legendary legacy while carving out his own identity in the business. But what makes this situation even more infuriating is how We's corporate machine immediately went into damage control mode, not to protect Dominik's privacy or ensure his medical care, but to figure out how they could spin this tragedy into their ongoing storylines. Sources within the company report that creative team meetings were held within hours of Dominik being hospitalized, with writers discussing how to incorporate his medical emergency into future programming and whether Liv Morgan's genuine emotional trauma could be used to advance their romantic storyline. The callousness is absolutely breathtaking. While Dominik was fighting for his life in a hospital bed, hooked up to monitors and receiving emergency cardiac care, WWE executives were in conference rooms discussing how to exploit his medical emergency for entertainment value. This isn't just corporate insensitivity. This is a fundamental failure of basic human decency that should horrify anyone who claims to care about the well-being of professional wrestlers. Liv Morgan's emotional state following the incident has been described by those close to her as completely devastated. The woman who has built her career on being tough, resilient, and professionally composed was reduced to tears and panic as she watched someone she cares about collapse in front of her. The psychological trauma of witnessing a medical emergency, especially involving someone you have genuine feelings for, is something that will likely affect her for years to come. What's particularly disturbing about WWE's handling of this situation is how they've attempted to control the narrative surrounding Liv Morgan's reaction. Instead of providing her with immediate counseling and support services, the company reportedly pressured her to continue with scheduled media appearances and promotional obligations, essentially asking her to pretend that watching Dominik suffer a heart attack was just another day at the office. The medical details that are emerging about Dominik's condition are deeply concerning and raise serious questions about the long-term health implications for young wrestlers in WWE. Cardiac episodes in athletes under 30 are relatively rare and often indicate underlying conditions that may have been developing for months or years without proper detection or treatment. Sources close to the Mysterio family are reporting that Rey Mysterio was absolutely livid when he learned about WWE's initial response to his son's medical emergency. The legendary wrestler, who has dedicated his life to the business and trusted WWE with his son's career, is reportedly considering legal action against the company for their handling of the situation and their apparent prioritization of entertainment value over Dominik's health and safety. The relationship between Rey Mysterio and WWE management has always been complex, but this incident may have permanently damaged any trust that existed between the family and the corporate structure. When a father watches his son suffer a medical emergency on live television and then learns that the company's first instinct was to continue filming rather than prioritize medical care, it creates a level of betrayal that may be impossible to repair. The wrestling community's reaction to this incident has been swift and overwhelmingly critical of WWE's handling of the situation. Veteran wrestlers who have witnessed the evolution of the business over decades are expressing shock and disgust at the company's apparent callousness toward performer safety and well-being. Independent medical professionals who specialize in sports cardiology are raising serious questions about WWE's medical screening processes and whether the company is doing enough to monitor the cardiovascular health of their performers. The physical demands of professional wrestling, combined with the stress of constant travel and performance pressure, create unique health risks that require specialized medical attention and monitoring. What's particularly alarming is that this incident may not be an isolated case. Sources within WWE are suggesting that several other wrestlers have experienced similar symptoms, chest pains, irregular heartbeats, unusual fatigue, but have been reluctant to report these issues due to fear of being removed from storylines or losing their positions within the company. The culture of silence around health issues in professional wrestling is well documented, but Dominik's very public cardiac episode is forcing uncomfortable conversations about whether WWE's current medical protocols are adequate to protect their performers. When young, seemingly healthy athletes are suffering heart attacks during routine performances, it suggests systemic problems that extend far beyond individual cases. The financial implications of this incident are also significant. Dominik Mysterio has been positioned as a key figure in WWE's future plans, with storylines and merchandising deals built around his character development and relationship with Liv Morgan. His medical emergency potentially disrupts months of creative planning and could affect the company's ability to deliver on promised storylines to their television partners. But the financial considerations pale in comparison to the human cost of this incident. Dominik is a young man with his entire life ahead of him, and the long-term implications of his cardiac episode are still unknown. Will he be able to continue wrestling? Will this affect his quality of life? Will there be permanent damage to his cardiovascular system that could impact his longevity and overall health? The leaked medical reports that are circulating within wrestling circles paint a concerning picture of a young athlete whose cardiovascular system was under extreme stress. The combination of physical training, performance pressure, travel fatigue, and the psychological demands of maintaining a heel character may have created a perfect storm of conditions that contributed to his cardiac episode. Liv Morgan's role in this tragedy cannot be understated. Her quick thinking and immediate calls for medical help may have literally saved Dominik's life. While WWE production staff were confused about whether this was part of the show, Liv recognized the severity of the situation and took action that potentially prevented a much more serious outcome. The footage of Liv's emotional breakdown as paramedics worked on Dominik is absolutely heartbreaking. This is a woman who has built her career on being tough and resilient, but watching someone she cares about suffer a medical emergency broke through all of her professional composure and revealed the genuine human being underneath the wrestling persona. WWE's treatment of Liv Morgan in the aftermath of this incident is almost as disturbing as their initial response to Dominik's medical emergency. Instead of providing her with counseling and support services, the company reportedly pressured her to maintain her scheduled appearances and continue promoting their storylines as if nothing had happened. The psychological trauma of witnessing a cardiac episode, especially involving someone you have personal feelings for, is something that requires professional support and treatment. For WWE to expect Liv to simply compartmentalize this experience and continue with business as usual demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of human psychology and emotional well-being. The ripple effects of this incident are being felt throughout the entire WWE roster. Wrestlers who were already concerned about the company's commitment to performer safety are now openly questioning whether their own health and well-being would be prioritized if they faced a similar medical emergency. The locker room atmosphere following Dominik's cardiac episode has been described as tense and worried. Performers are reportedly having private conversations about their own health concerns and whether they should seek independent medical evaluations outside of WWE's medical system. This incident is also raising broader questions about the wrestling industry's approach to performer health and safety. While WWE has made significant improvements in concussion protocols and other safety measures over the years, cardiac health screening and monitoring may be an area where the company's policies are inadequate. The demands placed on modern WWE performers are significantly different from those faced by wrestlers in previous eras. The combination of year-round touring schedules, intense physical training, promotional obligations, and the psychological pressure of maintaining character consistency creates unique stressors that may not be adequately addressed by traditional medical screening processes. Independent medical experts are calling for comprehensive cardiovascular screening for all WWE performers, including regular EKGs, stress tests, and monitoring of heart rhythm and function. The cost of such programs would be significant, but the alternative, young wrestlers suffering cardiac episodes during live performances, is unacceptable. The legal implications of this incident are also substantial. If it can be demonstrated that WWE was aware of Dominik's health concerns and failed to provide adequate medical care or monitoring, the company could face significant liability for his medical expenses, lost earnings, and pain and suffering. Rey Mysterio's reported consideration of legal action against WWE is particularly significant given his status within the wrestling community and his long-standing relationship with the company. If a respected veteran like Rey Mysterio is willing to take legal action against WWE over their handling of his son's medical emergency, it sends a powerful message about the severity of the situation. The public relations nightmare that WWE is facing as a result of this incident is compounded by their initial response and their apparent prioritization of entertainment value over human life. The footage of production staff treating Dominik's cardiac episode as part of the show, while Liv Morgan desperately tried to get medical help, is so damaging to WWE's corporate image that it may have lasting effects on their relationships with sponsors, television partners, and fans. Corporate sponsors are reportedly expressing concern about being associated with a company that appears to prioritize entertainment value over performer safety. The optics of WWE continuing to film while a young wrestler suffered a medical emergency are so damaging that several sponsors are allegedly reconsidering their partnerships with the company. Television partners are also reportedly concerned about the liability and public relations implications of airing programming that includes real medical emergencies. The line between entertainment and exploitation becomes very blurry when genuine medical crises are captured and broadcast as part of wrestling programming. The fan reaction to this incident has been overwhelmingly critical of WWE's handling of the situation. Social media platforms are flooded with condemnation of the company's initial response and support for both Dominik and Liv Morgan. The hashtags calling for better medical protocols and performer protection are trending worldwide. Longtime WWE fans are expressing disappointment and anger at the company's apparent callousness toward performer well-being. Many are questioning whether they can continue supporting a company that seems to view its wrestlers as expendable entertainment commodities rather than human beings deserving of basic care and respect. The wrestling media landscape is struggling to cover this story appropriately, balancing the public's right to know with respect for Dominik's privacy and medical confidentiality. The leaked footage and medical information raise ethical questions about how much detail should be reported when dealing with legitimate medical emergencies. International wrestling promotions are watching WWE's handling of this incident carefully, as it may affect the broader industry's approach to performer health and safety. If WWE faces significant legal or financial consequences as a result of their response to Dominik's cardiac episode, it could force changes throughout the wrestling industry. The long-term career implications for both Dominik and Liv Morgan are still unclear. Dominik's ability to continue wrestling will depend on his recovery and the underlying causes of his cardiac episode. Liv Morgan may need time away from WWE to deal with the psychological trauma of witnessing the incident and the company's subsequent treatment of her. Medical professionals are emphasizing that cardiac episodes in young athletes, while relatively rare, can have serious long-term implications even with proper treatment. The fact that Dominik's episode occurred during physical activity raises additional concerns about his cardiovascular fitness and ability to continue performing at the high level required for professional wrestling. The support system around both Dominik and Liv Morgan will be crucial for their recovery and future success. The wrestling community has historically been supportive of performers facing health challenges, but the public nature of this incident and WWE's controversial response may complicate the healing process. As this story continues to develop, the wrestling world is holding its breath waiting for updates on Dominik's condition and WWE's plans for addressing the systemic issues that this incident has revealed. The company's response in the coming days and weeks will likely determine whether this becomes a turning point for improved performer safety or simply another controversy that gets swept under the corporate rug. The human cost of this incident, Dominik's health, Liv Morgan's trauma, Rey Mysterio's betrayal, and the broader wrestling community's loss of trust in WWE's commitment to performer safety, cannot be measured in ratings or revenue. This is a moment that demands accountability, change, and a fundamental reassessment of priorities within the wrestling industry. What happened to Dominik Mysterio and Liv Morgan on Monday Night Raw was not entertainment, it was a tragedy that exposed the worst aspects of corporate wrestling culture and the dehumanizing effects of prioritizing profits over people. The wrestling community deserves better, the performers deserve better, and the fans who invest their emotions and support in these athletes deserve a company that values human life over television ratings. This story is far from over, and the decisions WWE makes in response to this crisis will define their corporate character and determine whether they can regain the trust they've lost through their callous handling of a young wrestler's medical emergency. Monday Night Raw will never be the same again. And what happened last night has left the entire WWE universe, wrestlers, and even hardened industry veterans completely speechless and shaken to their core. In what can only be described as the most terrifying and heartbreaking moment in recent WWE history, Dominik Mysterio collapsed during a live segment with Liv Morgan, suffering what medical personnel are confirming was a cardiac episode that had everyone in the arena fearing for his life. But here's what's making this situation absolutely infuriating and heartbreaking at the same time. WWE continued filming, cameras kept rolling, and what should have been a private medical emergency became a public spectacle that has divided the wrestling world and sparked outrage across social media. The raw, unfiltered emotion from Liv Morgan as she desperately tried to help Dominik while screaming for medical assistance has become one of the most viral and controversial clips in wrestling history. You think you've seen everything in professional wrestling. You think you know how WWE operates behind the scenes. Well, last night's events have exposed the cold, calculated machine that prioritizes ratings and content over human decency, and the footage that leaked from backstage paints an even more disturbing picture of how this medical emergency was handled by WWE management and production staff. The timeline of events that led to Dominik's collapse reads like a nightmare scenario that no wrestler, no matter how experienced, should ever have to endure. The segment started innocuously enough. Liv Morgan and Dominik were in the middle of what was supposed to be a routine backstage interview promoting their upcoming mixed tag team match. Everything seemed normal, typical WWE programming that fans have seen thousands of times before. But then, approximately 4 minutes into the segment, viewers noticed something was wrong. Dominik, who had been speaking normally just moments before, suddenly stopped mid-sentence and began clutching his chest. His face went pale, beads of sweat instantly appeared on his forehead, and he began struggling to breathe. Liv Morgan, initially thinking this might be part of some unscripted storyline development, continued with her lines until she realized something was genuinely wrong. What happened next has become the subject of intense controversy and debate throughout the wrestling community. Instead of immediately cutting away from the segment or stopping the cameras, WWE production continued filming as Dominik collapsed to the floor, gasping for air and showing clear signs of cardiac distress. Liv Morgan's reaction was immediate and genuine. She dropped to her knees beside him, frantically calling for help while tears streamed down her face. The audio picked up by the cameras captured Liv screaming, "Someone help him. Please, someone help him right now," while Dominik lay motionless on the concrete floor of the backstage area. Her voice cracking with emotion and terror, she could be heard pleading with production staff and crew members who seemed frozen in shock and uncertainty about how to respond to the unfolding medical crisis. But here's where this story becomes absolutely enraging. According to multiple sources who were present during the incident, it took nearly 3 full minutes for medical personnel to arrive on scene. 3 minutes of Dominik lying unconscious while Liv Morgan performed basic first aid that she learned from WWE's mandatory safety training. 3 minutes of cameras rolling while a young man's life hung in the balance. 3 minutes that felt like an eternity to everyone watching both live and at home. The leaked backstage footage, which WWE has been desperately trying to suppress through legal action and copyright claims, shows the complete chaos that erupted once medical personnel finally arrived. EMTs immediately began performing CPR while Liv Morgan was gently but firmly moved away from Dominik's unconscious body. The raw footage captures her complete breakdown as the reality of the situation hit her. This wasn't a storyline, this wasn't part of the show, this was real life and someone she cared about was fighting for his life. What makes this situation even more heartbreaking is the genuine relationship that had developed between Liv Morgan and Dominik Mysterio over the months they had been working together. Sources close to both wrestlers confirm that their on-screen chemistry had translated into a real friendship backstage, with Liv often serving as a mentor and confidant to the younger Mysterio as he navigated the pressures of being a second-generation WWE superstar. The medical details that have emerged about Dominik's condition are both shocking and concerning for someone so young and seemingly healthy. At just 26 years old, Dominik appeared to be in excellent physical condition, following the rigorous training and health monitoring protocols that all WWE superstars must adhere to. The fact that he suffered what doctors are preliminarily classifying as a cardiac episode has raised serious questions about the physical and mental stresses that WWE places on its performers. Industry medical experts who have reviewed the available footage and reports are suggesting several possible factors that could have contributed to Dominik's collapse. The extreme physical demands of professional wrestling, combined with the constant travel schedule, irregular sleep patterns, and intense psychological pressure of performing at the highest level, can create a perfect storm of health risks that many wrestlers face but rarely discuss publicly. But there's another element to this story that's making the situation even more complex and emotionally charged. Sources within WWE are reporting that Dominik had been experiencing chest pains and breathing difficulties for several weeks leading up to the incident, but had been reluctant to report these symptoms to WWE medical staff out of fear that it might affect his push and television time. This revelation has sparked outrage among wrestlers' rights advocates and former WWE performers who argue that the company's culture of performing through pain and the fear of losing opportunities creates dangerous situations where wrestlers hide serious medical conditions. The pressure to maintain their spot on the roster, especially for younger performers trying to establish themselves, can lead to life-threatening decisions to ignore warning signs and continue working despite health concerns. The immediate aftermath of Dominik's collapse was captured in disturbing detail by multiple camera angles and backstage personnel. Liv Morgan's emotional state deteriorated rapidly as she watched EMTs work on Dominik, and several wrestlers and staff members had to physically restrain her from interfering with the medical response. Her tears and desperate pleas for information about his condition created some of the most raw and genuine emotion ever captured on WWE programming. Rey Mysterio's reaction upon being informed of his son's medical emergency has been described by witnesses as absolutely devastating. The legendary wrestler, who was in another part of the arena preparing for his own segment, reportedly sprinted through backstage corridors and arrived just as EMTs were preparing to transport Dominik to the nearest hospital. The sight of his unconscious son being loaded onto a stretcher reduced Rey to tears, and he had to be supported by other wrestlers and staff members. The decision by WWE to continue broadcasting live coverage of the medical emergency has become one of the most controversial aspects of this entire situation. While some argue that the company was simply documenting a newsworthy event involving one of their contracted performers, others view it as an exploitative violation of privacy that prioritized ratings over human decency and dignity. Social media exploded within minutes of the incident, with hashtags related to Dominik's collapse trending worldwide as fans expressed their shock, concern, and outrage about how the situation was being handled. The leaked footage spread rapidly across multiple platforms, despite WWE's attempts to have it removed through copyright strikes and legal threats. The hospital where Dominik was transported has been overwhelmed with flowers, cards, and well wishes from fans around the world. The outpouring of support has been remarkable, with wrestlers from multiple promotions, celebrities, and thousands of fans expressing their hopes for his recovery. However, the family has requested privacy during this difficult time, and hospital officials have been tight-lipped about his current condition and prognosis. WWE's official response to the incident has been widely criticized as tone-deaf and inadequate. The company's initial statement, released nearly 6 hours after the collapse, was a brief, corporate-approved message that acknowledged the medical situation involving Dominik Mysterio and stated that he was receiving appropriate medical care. The statement made no mention of the circumstances surrounding the incident, the decision to continue filming, or any plans for investigating how the situation was handled. But behind the scenes, sources report that WWE management is in full crisis mode, dealing with potential lawsuits, media scrutiny, and internal investigations into their medical protocols and emergency response procedures. Several wrestlers have reportedly expressed concerns about their own safety and the company's ability to handle medical emergencies, leading to emergency meetings between WWE officials and the roster. The impact on Liv Morgan has been particularly devastating. Witnesses describe her as inconsolable in the hours following the incident, refusing to leave the hospital and camping out in the waiting room despite being told that only family members were allowed to visit. Her emotional investment in Dominik's well-being has surprised many who viewed their relationship as purely professional, revealing the depth of genuine friendship that had developed between the two performers. Medical experts who have analyzed the available footage are raising serious questions about WWE's emergency response protocols. The 3-minute delay in medical assistance could have been the difference between life and death in a cardiac emergency, and the fact that basic life-saving equipment wasn't immediately available in the backstage area has sparked calls for comprehensive reforms in how WWE handles medical situations. The wrestling community's response has been overwhelmingly supportive, with current and former wrestlers sharing their own experiences with health scares and medical emergencies during their careers. Many have used this incident as an opportunity to speak out about the need for better medical monitoring, mental health support, and workplace safety protections for professional wrestlers. Eddie Guerrero's tragic death in 2005 from heart failure has been referenced repeatedly in discussions about Dominik's collapse, serving as a stark reminder of how heart conditions can affect even young, seemingly healthy wrestlers. The similarities between the two situations have heightened fears and emotions throughout the wrestling community, particularly among Latino wrestlers and fans who see connections between the two beloved performers. The financial implications for WWE are potentially staggering. Beyond the immediate medical costs and potential legal liabilities, the company faces possible investigations from workplace safety regulators, medical licensing boards, and potentially criminal authorities if negligence is determined to have contributed to the severity of Dominik's condition. Sponsors and corporate partners are reportedly monitoring the situation closely, according to industry sources, which is corporate speak for considering whether continued association with WWE might damage their own brand reputations. The viral nature of the footage showing Dominik's collapse and the perceived callousness of WWE's response has created a public relations nightmare that could have lasting financial consequences. The psychological impact on other WWE performers cannot be understated. Seeing a young, healthy colleague suddenly collapse from a heart condition has forced many wrestlers to confront their own mortality and the very real health risks associated with their profession. Several wrestlers have reportedly requested immediate medical evaluations, and there are rumors that some are considering early retirement rather than risk similar health crises. Rhea Ripley, who has been part of the Judgment Day faction with Dominik, was reportedly so distraught by the incident that she had to be sedated by medical personnel. Her close friendship with Dominik, both on-screen and behind the scenes, made witnessing his collapse particularly traumatic. Sources indicate she has been in constant contact with the Mysterio family and has postponed all scheduled appearances until further notice. The role of social media in amplifying this crisis has been both beneficial and problematic. While the platform has allowed fans to express support and demand answers from WWE, it has also become a breeding ground for misinformation, conspiracy theories, and exploitative content creators trying to profit from the tragedy. Several channels have been monetizing reaction videos to the collapse footage, leading to widespread condemnation from the wrestling community. International wrestling promotions have used this incident as an opportunity to highlight their own medical protocols and safety measures, subtly criticizing WWE's handling of the situation while positioning themselves as more responsible alternatives for wrestlers concerned about their health and safety. This competitive dynamic has added another layer of complexity to WWE's crisis management efforts. The incident has also reignited discussions about the physical toll of modern professional wrestling. While the industry has made significant strides in terms of wrestler safety compared to previous decades, critics argue that the year-round schedule, increased athletic demands, and pressure to perform through injuries create an environment where serious health issues can develop and go undetected. Legal experts specializing in sports and entertainment law are predicting that this incident could lead to significant changes in how WWE and other wrestling promotions handle medical emergencies and health monitoring. The potential for wrongful death or negligence lawsuits, combined with possible regulatory investigations, could force industry-wide reforms that have been resisted for years. The human element of this story cannot be lost in the discussions about corporate responsibility and industry practices. Dominik Mysterio is someone's son, someone's friend, and a young man with his entire life ahead of him. The outpouring of genuine emotion from Liv Morgan and others who care about him has reminded everyone that behind the scripted drama and corporate machinery, professional wrestlers are real people with real relationships and real vulnerabilities. As this story continues to develop, several key questions remain unanswered. What was the exact medical cause of Dominik's collapse? Could it have been prevented with different medical protocols or earlier intervention? How will WWE change its procedures to prevent similar incidents in the future? And perhaps most importantly, will Dominik make a full recovery and be able to return to the ring? The wrestling world is holding its collective breath, waiting for updates on Dominik's condition while demanding accountability from WWE regarding how this medical emergency was handled. The image of Liv Morgan's tears and desperate pleas for help has become a symbol of both the genuine human connections within the wrestling industry and the need for better protection of performer health and safety. This incident has forever changed how fans view the relationship between entertainment and reality in professional wrestling. The stark reminder that serious medical emergencies can happen at any moment, to anyone, regardless of age or apparent health, has sobered even the most ardent supporters of wrestling's more dangerous elements. The long-term implications of this event will likely extend far beyond just WWE, influencing how all professional wrestling promotions approach medical care, emergency protocols, and performer welfare. The viral footage of Dominik's collapse and Liv's emotional response has created a watershed moment that the industry cannot ignore or simply wait for the public to forget. As we await further updates on Dominik's condition and WWE's response to the growing criticism, one thing is absolutely certain: Monday Night Raw on this date will be remembered as one of the most shocking and consequential episodes in the show's history, not for any scripted storyline or championship change, but for a real-life medical emergency that exposed both the humanity and the flaws within professional wrestling's biggest company. The wrestling community's prayers are with Dominik Mysterio and his family during this incredibly difficult time, while simultaneously demanding that WWE takes immediate action to ensure that no performer ever again has to suffer through a medical emergency without proper, immediate care. The tears that Liv Morgan shed were not just for her friend and colleague, but for an industry that too often prioritizes spectacle over the well-being of the people who make that spectacle possible.